We picked up where we last left off with the destruction of Tipoca City, and we learned that Tipoca City is not the only Kaminoan city to be destroyed, as every single Kaminoan facility on the planet has been annihilated. Meanwhile, the Bad Batch are still trying to make their way through the sinking city, when Crosshair gets trapped under some debris. The Bad Batch all eventually manage to move through the facility and encounter a sea monster along the way, and during their escape, the rest of the team explain to Hunter that Omega is actually a clone without the rapid aging process, making her essentially another clone just like Boba Fett. And so while she might appear to be younger, she is in fact older than the rest of the team. The Bad Batch tried their best to convince Crosshair that he should abandon the Empire and join them together, but Crosshair refuses, and while he may not wish to kill his former teammates, he still appears to be very loyal to the Empire. Towards the end of the episode, we finally get to see where Rampart has taken Nala Se and the other Kaminoan scientists. And it is here that we can actually take a very good look at the scientist who wears a very familiar symbol on her shoulder. The symbol that we see is in fact the same symbol for the cloners that we see in The Mandalorian. We have seen Dr. Pershing wear the exact same outfit before, which might suggest that whatever it is that they're doing in the Bad Batch is probably linked to The Mandalorian and Moff Gideon. It is entirely possible that the cloners are forcing Nala Se to work for them in order to create the Palpatine clones, or something else entirely. Perhaps something that we have already catched a glimpse of in The Mandalorian. Equally puzzling is the situation with Crosshair. In the previous episodes, we were told by him that he has already removed his inhibitor chip, and that it was his own personal decision to stay with the Empire, but I had an initial thought, which was what if Crosshair didn't remove his chip after watching the previous episode? And it seems as though this actually might be the case. In the previous episode, despite saying he removed his inhibitor chip, he actually keeps clutching his head, and he does it again in this episode, and on top of that, he says the line "good soldiers follow orders," which is the usual line that clones say when they are under the influence of the inhibitor chip. But this doesn't really explain why Crosshair didn't try to kill the rest of the Bad Batch. If he was under the influence, surely he would, right? Well, there might be a few reasons for this. It is entirely possible that the effect of the inhibitor chip is wearing off, and that Crosshair is beginning to be able to retain some of his own decisions, but because the inhibitor chip is still active, it still forces him to remain loyal to the Empire, and so he is constantly torn between the two. But this doesn't really explain why he thinks that he has removed the inhibitor chip. It is possible that when under the Empire, he was lied to by Rampart or the Kaminoans to make him think that his actions are his own will, which then allows them to better control Crosshair. But I don't think this is the case. What is more likely is that Crosshair did actually remove his inhibitor chip, but the effects of it are still being felt. So what do I mean by this? In the first episode of The Bad Batch, we learned that the mutations of Clone Force 99 allowed them to better resist the influence of the inhibitor chip. However, because Crosshair was captured and his inhibitor chip was further amplified to ensure his loyalty, it may have a much deeper effect. And so while Crosshair has removed his inhibitor chip, the sustained influence of the inhibitor chip prior to his removal may have caused some pretty lasting damages, which means while he is able to retain some of his old identity, his brain has been conditioned so much that he finds it very difficult to betray the Empire. And this would make a lot of sense, as the inhibitor chip after prolonged use might act as a brainwashing program that doesn't allow Crosshair to fully turn his back on the Empire, which he might not even realize consciously. This would then explain why he's able to let the Bad Batch go while staying loyal to the Empire and clutching his head all the time. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.